Own the Road with Kelly and Bob, the USA 250 Tour, brought to you by Mueller. Coming up on this episode.
I think this was definitely something that was good for the United States. There was a lot of our immigrant labor that helped get this job completed and helped support this country and make it into what it is today.
We, the people of the United States of America.
Hi, and thanks for joining us for this edition of On the Road with Kelly and Bob, the USA 250 Tour. I'm Kelly Phillips.
And I'm Bob Phillips. Kelly, one of the things that you and I have both been fascinated by as we travel around the U.S. to all 50 states this year is the ingenuity that Americans have exhibited in our past.
Yeah, we've encountered story after story about how when something needs to be done, people in this country have generally found a way to do whatever it is, then have stepped up and got the job done.
We ran across an incredible story on that recently when we visited the town of Ogden, Utah.
So this building was built in 1924. It's our third railroad station on this area.
It's over 100 years old.
This is the Firearms Museum. Down here we've got an art gallery, the Meyer Powell Gallery. Right now it's showing Wondrous West, which is tourism in the western United States.
And that's the Browning Firearm Museum. And Browning to this town was
one of our most famous inventors of all time. So really just absolutely changed our community and changed the world.
We are in Ogden taking a tour of the historic railroad depot there. That's Hope Agate showing us around. She runs things at the museums at Union Station.
That's museums, plural, because this place and this town have so much to talk about. There is more than one museum in this grand old building.
Now, a little bit about Ogden, in case you don't know. It's a town of about 90,000 just north of Salt Lake City, and it's widely considered to be the gateway to ski resorts like Snow Basin, Powder Mountain, and Nordic Valley.
Historic 25th Street was once home to a bunch of Prohibition-era speakeasies, and now it's packed full of great shopping and great eating places. And at the western end of 25th is the beautiful building where we are visiting today, Union Station, and its shops and museums like that Firearms Museum Hope mentioned, a classic car museum, and the gallery at the station, which is a collection of art, culture, and history.
But the real reason we are here is to talk about something that happened about an hour from Ogden, an historic event that absolutely, positively changed our nation.
I love learning about the past and the different ways that people lived and talked back then, but also the ways that we are just so fundamentally human for generations. It's all the same human story. So the Transcontinental Railroad is really just fundamental for our identity living here in Ogden. We were really at the epicenter for it. We were in the midst of this larger national conversation about whether to build a Transcontinental Railroad. And then with the meeting of the rails up at Promontory Summit, we were also right in the epicenter of the debate over where the Junction City should be to actually service those passengers. So Ogden became Junction City within a few years of the Transcontinental Railroad being completed. Since then, we've been a major railroad stop in general. There was a city saying for a long time that you can't go anywhere without going to Ogden, and that was very literally true because all the trains stopped here. I've always loved history since I was little. I remember being like 6 years old and asking my poor mother, like, what was it like in the olden days?
Our tour guide, Hope, is the perfect person to tell us about this monumental and historic achievement, the Transcontinental Railroad. Hope is not only a mega history buff, Well, she's from here.
I grew up in Logan, actually, and then I moved to Ogden when I was a teenager. But Ogden has always felt like home to me. It really is just a place that invites you to be yourself and to enjoy in this wonderful culture. Then I went back up to Logan. I did my undergraduate in history and anthropology up at Utah State University. Came back down to Ogden, started working here, and I've been here for 5 years now. I really enjoy it.
Why did we need a transcontinental railroad to begin with at that point in time?
Steam trains first came to the United States in the 1830s, and by the 1850s they were pretty much to the Mississippi River. But out here in the West, there was growing pressure that a lot of people on the East Coast wanted easier access to China and overseas. They were just eyeing the Pacific. There was a lot of historical context leading up to that with the California Gold Rush and increasing difficulty of sending materials and labor and mail and packages around South America or through the Panama Canal. Those are all very difficult options back then. So there was a lot of growing pressure to just connect the eastern United States with what would become the rest of the United States in the 1800s as well. It's really incomprehensible, the world that we live in today, without the Transcontinental Railroad. It connected the first communication lines, the first real freight traffic, improved our economic access to the rest of the world. It was just an astounding feature.
How did they know they were even going to meet up at that point in time?
And that's a great story too. There was a problem in Utah, and it was the Great Salt Lake. Brigham Young, who was governor of Utah at the time, really wanted the railroad to be in Salt Lake, but that was just geographically very difficult with the location of the Great Salt Lake. So instead, the railroad companies agreed to meet north of the Great Salt Lake at Promontory Summit, called Promontory Point back then. And then Brigham Young cut a deal with the railroad, so they actually built out a leg from Salt Lake up to Promontory very quickly after the Transcontinental was completed. With the increasing political pressure for a railroad access across the West, they had sent out surveyors in the early 1860s to be scouting out this whole area and figure out the best and easiest path to go through. This meant going around mountains, going around bodies of water, sticking close enough to the water that they can, function their steam train and form the best route west. But they are also getting paid by the mile. So by the time they got up to Utah, and especially out towards Promontory Summit, they intentionally overshot each other so that they could keep building, collect more of a paycheck from Congress, as well as gain more control over the Utah
intentionally
area.
overshot each other.
Yes.
By how much? How long did this go on?
They were going for quite a while until the Congress finally really put their finger down and said, you have to meet up. And
what did this do for the United States of America, having a railroad that joined East Coast to West Coast?
It really just provided our very first communication and economic outlet. So right after the Golden Spike was laid, they sent the first transcontinental telegraph message done, which was just the instantaneous communication for the very first time. Instead of waiting for your letter for months, you can send a message within hours, minutes. And that's really, really impossible to overstate, as well as changing the economy so that it's economically feasible now, not just to sell your crops or your minerals to your neighbors, but to actually send it across the entire country and buy and sell on a global scale.
It changed our economy then.
A lot of people call this the Transcontinental Railroad the greatest engineering feat of the 19th century.
Okay, Kelly, a couple of points. First, if you haven't been to Ogden, well, it's a cool town that I recommend seeing. If you're in Salt Lake City, for example, and you have an extra day, you're just about an hour away from Ogden.
And two, some people have asked us if Union Station in Ogden is worth a visit. The answer, definitely, because it's so inspirational to see what people were capable of long before we had machinery, technology, and the know-how that we have today.
So let's pick up with some more of the conversation with Hope and a bit of our tour of the museum.
This is the part I wanted to show you, though. This is the entrance to our Utah State Railroad Museum. And these trestles right here are the original, or last surviving original trestles of the Lucin Cutoff, which was built a little bit after the Transcontinental Railroad in 1903 to just cut the railroad line directly across the Great Salt Lake rather than going all the way around it.
What's this picture?
So this is a lovely picture of our railroad cafe. So this was in our former building, the 1889 building, which burned down. And this is one of the places that railroad travelers could stop in and grab a bite to eat or have some lunch while they're waiting for their train to refuel and recoal.
This was really a hub of activity.
It absolutely was. Millions of people. I mean, during World War II alone, we had 1.6 million World War II soldiers move through our building.
It says here as you walk into the Railroad Museum part of this building, an engineering marvel. You know, the need and design, manpower, the equipment, the hardships.
Can you imagine a lot of this stuff was powered by man?
And steam. People don't realize when the Transcontinental Railroad first started, it was all steam engines at that point. That's how railroads worked. Coming over here shows the route as it goes across. All the way from Sacramento through the famous Donner Pass right here, all the way up here. And of course they're trying to go north of the Great Salt Lake. So Salt Lake City is down here, and here's Ogden, and here's the Promontory summit where it actually eventually was joined, and that's the site of the great Golden Spike ceremony and all of that.
Just the fact that they had to go around that lake and across through the mountains. Leapfrog labor. In the race to reach Utah, both railroads built unconnected segments of track, planning to fill the gaps later.
Boy, that's a leap of faith. They're going to go all the way across the country, not knowing exactly where they're going to meet up at that point when they started.
And then when they get close, let's overshoot it so we can make some more wet.
The railroads passed each other in Utah. They continued construction in opposite directions until they were forced to join, and that's when Congress that was funding all of this.
But they were making payments.
Yeah, well, they got paid by the mile, and they did 10 miles a day is what they were. The Central Pacific cruise that came out of California laid 10 miles of track in one day. That's a record, by the way, that has never been beaten to this time. Of course, there was a lot of tragedy that happened with this railroad. A lot of people were killed doing this. There were a lot of people that were. This railroad was built on the backs of some people who needed the work, and they weren't always treated great during this.
Look at this, General Jack's Army and the Hell on Wheels. Mm-hmm. John and Dan Casement were barely 5 feet tall, but they were big enough to organize and discipline an army of Civil War veterans.
Yeah.
During the war, they had trouble finding labor. Work crews had completed a meager 40 miles of track in 3 years.
That ain't gonna work.
No, but after the war, thousands of newly released veterans came looking for work. John Casement was among them. He was a brigadier general in the war, known as General Jack. He and his brother Dan were experienced railroad construction contractors. In February of 1866, the Union Pacific awarded them the track laying contract.
Can you imagine?
They laid over 100 miles of track. By the year's end, they reached milepost 305.
Wow.
So Union Pacific started building out from Omaha. The rails had gotten to that point. So they started in Omaha, and then the Union Pacific crews, which were largely Irish immigrants, some formerly enslaved people, had moved across from Omaha, building across the Great Plains. And then Central Pacific started in Sacramento, California, and they had a much harder job because they had to build across the Sierra Nevadas. So with those elevation changes, there was some very significant challenges that they were facing.
So they start in Omaha and Sacramento. They're working their way toward each other. This is 100 years before we had anything like a computer. Who all built this railroad?
Who built the railroad? Yes. A lot of people will try to say it's the rich people, but they weren't doing any of the physical labor.
Of course not, no.
But so the Union Pacific side were using a lot of Irish immigrants. They also used some people that had been formerly enslaved, Black Americans. And then on the Central Pacific side, they were having a huge labor crisis, trying to find workers that were willing to cross the Sierra Nevadas. So they ended up choosing to use a lot of immigrants from China, especially one specific region in China was going through a famine at the same time. So there was a lot of immigrants coming to California seeking their fortunes.
And this was an opportunity for them to make some money.
And this was an opportunity for them to make some money and support their families back home. A lot of these immigrants were just single men that were trying to support their families back home.
Was it then, it was pretty much an international effort when it comes to the labor that put this together?
I think this was definitely something that was good for the United States, and there was a lot of our immigrant labor that helped get this job completed and helped support this country and make it into what it is today. We are proud tellers of that transcontinental story. One of my favorite things on display is our 1969 Centennial Spike, the spike that was used commemorating the Transcontinental Railroad. And I also really, really enjoy our model train display as well, which depicts the whole route of the Transcontinental Railroad. There's really something magical about those model trains and watching them spin around. So I see, kids 100 years old that still really love watching those trains go around.
We hear about the tale of the golden spike at a ceremony. Did that actually happen, that there was a ceremony, and was there a golden spike, or is that all myth?
There was. They did do a big celebration. So most people don't know this. The rails were actually completed a few days before, but it was the celebration that was held on May 10th. And they had 4 golden spikes, or 2 of them were silver, 2 of them were gold, and they were presented to a lot of the key financiers and political movers of the time.
The golden spike. There it is.
This is actually a replica that was done for an anniversary here. But that's exactly what it looked like.
And it's in the safe.
The golden spike.
There it is.
And that joined us all together.
In places like Ogden, we were a farming community of 1,500 people when the first train came here. And really, having access to the jobs and the opportunities that the railroad opened up fundamentally transformed who we are and how we can communicate with others. Ogden became a huge epicenter for shipping, for food exports, as well as a huge railroading community.
What's the population of Ogden today?
It's about 87,000 people. And in 1930, about 10% of our population was directly employed by the railroad. We were the stopping point for all trains going north, south, east, and west. So pretty much any train coming to the western U.S. came through Ogden. Ogden really helped put Utah on the map. It connected people to Salt Lake, allowed travelers to come here, to come over there. It expanded aspects like tourism, the first national parks, railroad access to our public lands, as well as allowing us to connect with that global economy and allow our leaders in Utah to have direct access to the East Coast as well, to talk and commute about ideas on the national stage.
When the Mormon people first came here, the idea was not for this to become a state of the United States. This was hopefully going to be its own country. Did all of that impact the railroad and that idea impact the idea that Utah would become part of the United States? Or
it's a very complicated idea. So when the LDS pioneers first got here in 1847, this was part of Mexico.
Right.
And that was an intentional choice because of the persecutions that these people had faced in the eastern states. So they got out here, and then pretty immediately the U.S. gains control of it with the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. So with that, they start working within this context, start petitioning for becoming a territory, and then start working towards statehood. Originally, like the county of Weber that we're sitting in now, originally stretched all the way to the Pacific. But for some reason, it wasn't quite a comfortable idea for people sitting on the East Coast.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of negotiations that had to do, a lot of anti-Mormon sentiments as well that prevented Utah from becoming a state much earlier. And then with the Transcontinental Railroad, it was a very distinct reason why Ogden was chosen rather than Salt Lake. Ogden quickly became the center for a lot of non-LDS people to forum opposition to the LDS Church, or to, expand the conversation about the ways that we should rule and govern ourselves. Yes, a lot of workers came here, a lot of workers for the railroad, as well as workers that were supporting the railroad in different ways, like merchants, hotel owners, a lot of people that were moving into Ogden because of the economic opportunity were not associated with the LDS Church.
Are there some little known facts that people don't necessarily know about Utah and its history?
Oh, exactly. Well, I think one of them we've been kind of talking around is that Ogden was the big transportation hub, not Salt Lake. We've been competing with them as our redheaded step sibling for the last 150 years, but the center of all of our transit activity has always been Ogden. And I think Utah has always just been at the forefront of pushing new ideas about having these access to these wonderful outdoor lands and the ways that we can explore and enjoy those lands.
When I try to put myself all the way back there, and you realize that the LDS people there was some persecution that drove them to this area.
Yeah.
And then this railroad is going to come here that brings people from everywhere. Was there ever a moment where the LDS leadership went, do we really want this? Or were they always in favor? Or
That's a great question. I don't know about the specifics about the early years of the Transcontinental Railroad, but Brigham Young actually helped complete the leg of the railroad between Salt Lake and Promontory, because they did want to have that access. They wanted to have that national conversation pretty quickly. Far enough away that, a little bit less under the eye of the U.S. Congress, but enough connection that they can have that economic opportunity as well.
And in the end, it all worked out very well.
It did. Well, and you'll laugh, but I actually just found out earlier today that one of Brigham Young's helpers in building this Lego was my 5 great grandpa. I didn't know that until today. So
was your, say that again?
My 5 great grandpa, his name was Thomas E. Ricks, was one of the workers that helped complete this.
That worked on this railroad.
Yeah, or helped arrange the labor to complete this Lego.
What does that feel like for you?
It was cool. Well, I've lived in Utah all my life, and I didn't think I had this railroad connection. So it was a very interesting experience. I'm like, oh, I didn't know that I actually had the heritage tying me to this important piece of our national history. Oh, I love it so much. Just connecting people with the stories of the past. I always hope that people can come to the museum and they can make a personal connection that they didn't know before, that they identify with a historical figure, or they learn something new that makes them see the world in a different way. And by building those meaningful connections with the past, we can really ensure that we remember our heritage and our legacy, and take those lessons of courage and ingenuity and grit and really carry them into the present and future. True, honest history is one of the only things that we have to teach us about what our future is going to look like. So being able to examine the lessons of the past, the good and the bad, can really help share what we want our future to become and how we can shape that and avoid the pitfalls of the past. I kind of stumbled into my work here. I intended to go on to a PhD program in history when I first started here, but I ended up loving the aspect of working with the community and working with the public so much, sharing that history and making those personal connections, that I found it much more worthwhile to stay in the museum field and to keep sharing those stories. Well, I mentioned I grew up in Logan, which is about an hour away from here. And I remember being 2 or 3 years old, standing in the grand lobby of this building and just appreciating the history and legacy here. So being able to work in this museum now, to be able to share these stories with a new generation, is just really like we're pushing it forward to the next generation and keep creating those history moments.
You've come full circle.
I've come full circle.
So essentially, the Transcontinental Railroad was the internet of its time. It shrunk the continent and stitched together the country into a single massive marketplace that set the stage for how we move goods and stay connected even today. We want to thank you again for joining us for this week's edition of On the Road with Kelly and Bob, the USA 250 Tour. Don't forget, you can follow us, like us on Facebook, Instagram, and also subscribe to our YouTube page, and that way you can see all the video from all of our different stops across the USA. We're hitting all 50 states. You don't want to miss it. You can listen to On the Road with Kelly and Bob wherever you get your podcast. Best thing to do, though, download that free Odyssey app. Listen anytime, anywhere.